reason why we do storytelling at sundown, and I come from a very traditional Native background. I grew up north of here. Sundown is usually when everybody gets together to eat and set. Traditionally, it was a time to get around and tell the stories. You eat, then father or grandfather would have a story. So we try to stay traditional every time they ask about when storytelling is of a time. Well, sundown. We used to actually be right over there across the valley where that new lodge is, and we used the sun from the arch from that pavilion to let us know that's when the time when we were going to start. So if you notice, I don't wear a watch. I always have to ask somebody else what time it is. I know, Rick, you look kind of confused, because I really don't care what time it is. When everybody's going to the chow hall or everybody's going to the down hall, I know it's time to eat. Bigfoot storytelling. I travel around Oklahoma and talk at a lot of tribal events on storytelling. A lot of Bigfoot conferences around the country have a storytelling time. People can get up, tell their stories, tell their experiences. What I've learned over the years here at Honobia, there's probably been 24 people that didn't really want to get up and tell their story in front of somebody, but later they caught me and we walked off and they told their story. And we kind of not really call it the AAA, Bigfoot witnesses, but it kind of is, because sometimes witnesses that have an experience, depending on how traumatic it is, they're carrying that around with them. People that have the experience, sometimes it's very traumatic. They see how other people are treated, or they just don't feel that they want to tell what they saw. So it starts to eat on them, what they saw, and the fact that they really don't want to tell nobody because they're going to get the fear of the ridicule and what somebody's going to think of them. So they keep that story bottled up until they can find somebody that has an open mind that's not going to make fun of them. And I know there's 3 gentlemen that I've talked to over the years that just by that sheer them telling me their story of what happened, I still talk to a couple of them. They can actually move on with their life because it was so traumatic. There's different Native culture and Native belief in things. And when you talk about it, there's a lot of tribes that just don't even talk about it. Because again, they believe if you're talking about it, it gives it power. So when we do storytelling, because you're talking about this realm of the unknown and the realm of the supernatural, paranormal, whatever word you want to use. All right, who wants to be first? I would have known Rick would be first. Come on, Rick. I've known Rick a long time.
I wouldn't brag.
You wouldn't brag? You're in his book. And your name's Shakikwa.
How many people here believe Bigfoot exists? How many don't believe? Let me be truthful. Wow, I don't see any ends at all.
I got time, dude.
Do you ever wonder why they never find the body? Why they haven't captured one? Would you like to know the answer? I would too. I don't have those answers. But anyway, let's see, about 2003, I was fishing in a creek, North Texas. I was 55 years old at that time. I'm 66 today, or not today, but this year. I had hunted, fished, camped, hiked in prime Bigfoot areas, and if somebody would have asked me up until 55 years old if Bigfoot, do you believe it? You know, if they were out there, I would have seen one. You hear that all the time, okay? 2003, I'm out in Rowlett Creek, down there by Dallas, very close to Dallas, had a cinder block sized rock thrown at my son and I while we were night fishing. Hit within 5 feet of us and made a splash about like a 50-pound child doing a cannonball off the high dive. Folks, it got my undivided attention. Plus it scared the crap out of me, or close to it. That started my quest for answers. I knew how far it came from. I had seen and heard stuff in the brush from that far away. Whether I believed in Bigfoot or not, I knew I couldn't think of any animal or person that could throw something that big from that far away. I knew that happened. I got on a website, I made a report, and an investigator called me named Troy Hudson with BFRO at that time, Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. The man, I won't say schooled me, but he led me to some answers, and I was out in the field with him using some of the techniques and knowledge that he had, where I had my first sighting through binoculars at 150 yards. I thought, oh, I've seen one. I went back and I told my wife, and I got this funny, kind of a odd, blank stare. You know, it wasn't a rejection, but you that have seen one and talked to other people, they give you that kind of puzzled look where they don't really know how to answer you. I mean, they like you, they're your loved ones, they're your friends. I thought once I told everybody that I'd seen one, that everybody would believe me. No, that doesn't happen. I went through a phase of trying to prove they exist. I went past that, folks. I've reached a point where I have more questions than answers on how they do what they do. I'm not a big, into the paranormal, but I do believe in the spiritual. I do believe there are things that go on that we can't see. Has anybody ever here held love in their hand? Can you smell love? Can you see love? No. But it is a very existing entity that binds people together. There's a whole lot. Right now we're surrounded by voices. Can you hear them? No, because you don't have a radio to turn it on. You know, the old saying, if I don't see it, hear it, or smell it, it doesn't exist. Folks, there's a lot in this world that don't apply to our five senses. It goes beyond that. So having said that, I'll tell you one story. I've got a lot of them. I'm selling my book over there. I've got pictures of one that we took. I've got a ton of pictures on that. I've been very blessed, folks. I've got a lot of night vision video. I just like to share. I'm not going to try to prove to any of you they exist, but I've just got a whole story of how I came from being a skeptic to a believer. And Big Tim, wherever he is, he's somewhere around here, riding one of these. 2010 here in Honobia. We're out there. There's a far A-frame cabin way out, I guess, to the left, south side. I was helping Troy at that time. My first career was in law enforcement. I retired from that 20-something years ago, and thank God I don't go back to that. I wouldn't want to do that now. And I got my health and strength and sanity out of it. But Tim was with me. Kathy Strain. Has anybody ever heard of Kathy Strain? She was here giving speaking on a certain subject. Tim and I were helping with security. She came knocking on her door about 3 in the morning, and she said, kids are knocking on her cabin. She said, they're pranking around out there. I need to get my sleep. I need to speak here the next morning. So Tim and I get up, we get in his pickup, and we kind of hunker down and kind of hide, go stealth mode, in his pickup with the windows down. I'd say better part of an hour went by, and we could start hearing movement and footsteps coming around the backside of that A-frame cabin. And we start looking, and him and I ease out, no lights on in his pickup. We close the pickup doors, and I get between the cabins. And folks, this is one of the things I can't explain, and I'm sure there's some of you experienced it. I could actually trace the steps that I was hearing in the leaves, but I couldn't see anything clearly at all. It was backlit by a far street light, but I could easily make out the progress. While Tim was next to me, he bolted back towards the cabin. I thought, oh good, he's going to get the camera. if we get it and we see it, we'll get a picture of it. I thought that was the case until I heard the cabin door lock, and I was out there by myself. But anyway, I've got a lot of stories. I want to open it up for somebody else. But folks, I can tell you these things have reasoning, they have cognitive thinking, and they're very intuitive. You're not going to go out there and herd them and bait them and switch them like dumb animals. They're not that at all. They do things far beyond what sometimes I can comprehend, but I do know they have never threatened me, nor have I felt threatened out there. I've been a little nervous at times, but the closest I had a family group of 5 get within 15 feet of me. Troy was there. He was on in another part of the woods. And when these things get close, the best way I can describe it is the whole atmosphere is charged. It is almost overwhelming. You have a high level of emotions. It's hard to explain, but if you had one near you, you know what I'm talking about. I was on the verge of really, I've got high blood pressure and a whole lot of stuff there, health issues. I was okay until a little 3-foot toddler broke from one of the young females, and it came towards me with its little arms lifted up, like a baby would want you to lift it up. And the father was a massive 50-foot back in the woods. I thought the little one might have mistaken me for one of them. And as it drew close, I was worried it might recognize me and squeal out, in fear. And I'd have Big Daddy come charging down that trail and, break me in half. Fortunately, the young female grabbed it and pulled it back, got within about 2 feet of me. At that point, I told my host who had brought me out there, she interacted with him. I said, I'm ready to go. But anyway, I have a whole lot to talk about, but I can tell you this much, folks. They're real. They do things I can't explain or understand. But man, it is a blast to I'll tell one more. Drew, right there. He's wearing the green shirt. Hey, Troy called me out. I'm gonna call you out. We were up in Kentucky on a BFRO expedition, and if you've never been on one, it was on my bucket list. I've made 3 in the last year. Never gone on one. I've been on 3 now. Met some wonderful people. I was sleeping in his travel trailer. His wife doesn't care to go. My wife doesn't care to go to that. I hear a tapping about 3 in the morning. I'm trying to get some sleep, and I hear a tap, 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 tap. I wake up and I think, man, I'm kind of imagining things. So I try to roll back to sleep. I hear it, and it's right by where my head is. How they know that, I don't know, folks, but there was another tap, 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 tap. And I woke up and I said, look, and if you talk to them, they can understand, folks. I can tell you a whole lot, and some of it's in my book. You notice I'm marketing my booklet anyway. But I said, look, I'm tired. Would you please let me sleep? There was no more knocking. Well, I told Drew the next day, I said, I don't know if you know it, but they're coming up to the trailer at night. And I got that kind of, he wasn't rude, but I got that kind of a blank stare where they don't really know how to kind of answer you or say, yeah, that's a little bit far out. The next night, he stepped out of the trailer, but we had cooked hamburgers, and some of the patties had dropped through the grill on that outside grill in the campsite. So he gets out of the trailer the next night to go across the road there to a great shower, better than the little one in his trailer. And I feel him going down the stairs to the trailer, and when he hits that last step, I feel the whole trailer rock. The door comes swinging open, and he dives in there with his eyes wide as plates, and he goes, something big just ran away out there, and I didn't even jump up. I was at my computer, and I sat there, and I kind of glanced over at him, and I said, I told you so. Anyway, I have fun. Who else, Troy? Somebody else want to talk about their anything? All right, here he is. Good man. I've learned a ton from him.
Well, I got stories with Rick, but you won't go there.
No.
Again, you have to have somebody in the woods to tell the story. He actually hit on something I was going to kind of make a comment about what they can do. Anybody ever heard about eye shine? Has anybody, other than our guys, I know they have. Anybody here seen eye shine? You would think it's something we could have light, artificial light to shine back into their eyes for them to reflect back to you. We do expeditions here, usually in the colder months, and the location where we go is down below the horizon, down below, so there's no misidentification of a street light, a house light. If there's a light coming through the woods, it's been one thing or another. And he was hitting on the stuff that they can do. I have long put that aside of how they can do it, why they do it, they just do things. We stay with the flesh and blood, but there's something about them that's different.
Was everybody, how many people were here that saw the first speaker today at the, okay. You remember when he was talking about Concho, Oklahoma, and the casino video? And he was also talking about the North Canadian River and how it flows through Canadian County and moves its way east. That's where I live. I live right just 2 miles northeast as the crow flies from this Concho casino. And years ago, I used to go fishing with one of the elders, the Cheyenne elders that is from Concho. And he would always throw a fish up on the bank before we left. And I always thought, well, better smart by not asking what you're doing than stupid and open your mouth. So one day I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, hey, Chief, I said, why do you always throw a fish back up on the bank? And he said, I'm giving back to him. And I'm also paying my rent. I said, paying your rent? He goes, this is all theirs. We're just visiting. And he went on to say, after I asked him, why can't we see them? Why can't we hear them? And why they're not just walking up and getting to know us? Because I heard something back there. And he goes, yeah, you heard something all right. And he goes, they'll let you know they're there, but if they can do anything about it in their power, they're not going to let you see them, but they're going to watch you. And I said, well, why don't we have more contact in this faraway hide-and-go-seek game? And he said, because they are afraid. And I said, oh, afraid of us and all? And he goes, no, they could snap you like a twig. He said, they are afraid that if they get too close to us as human beings, that they will become one of us. And they don't want that. That's what he said. And I went, well, I kind of understand. Later on, 1988, I was out fishing and I was flipping. If any of you fishermen out there know what I'm talking about, I was close to the bank in a two-man bass boat. My buddy was running the trolling motor real slow and casting out crankbait out into the channel. And we're going along, and I'm working that bank about from here to those stumps and just kind of pitching out there. And behind one of the trees up on the bank, I noticed what I thought was a squirrel kind of pop around about this high. And I thought, well, this thing's going to play a little game with me, so I'll just keep fishing. And as I moved around, this thing was moving around, and I kind of went, well, it's doing what a squirrel does. Goes around the tree and hides from you. And as I got a little bit further, I glanced up again, and there was a kneecap. It wasn't a squirrel. It was a kneecap, a hairy, reddish brown kneecap. And that, I kind of felt something tingle up my spine, and I just kind of kept fishing, or pretending to anyway. And the more we came around, the more I was ruining his hiding spot. He couldn't hide behind the tree anymore, so it was too late for him to run. And if he had of, you know, the world would have known about it. So he's down here like this on that tree, and he's been going around like that, and he just can't quit watching us. He's so curious that he can't stop. He doesn't crawl on his belly and get out of there. So I got him now. I can see his whole left side, and his facial features, and his brow ridge. He was a male. I can tell you that, anatomically. And he was looking at me kind of like a dog would look at you when you're making a funny sound. You know how they kind of turn their head? And I just kept looking at him in disbelief. It was like, I tell everybody that asks me, it was like God, for a minute, was letting me see something that he don't let just everybody get to see. It was a phenomenal moment in my life, and it changed it. Not always for the better, but it definitely changed it. Anyway, to end the story, I finally kind of nudged my buddy and go, hey, we got us a fishing buddy. Turn around real slow and don't, I mean, you know, I'm kind of like that whispering, and he, what? And he turns around and he's looking at this thing right in the eye, and he screams, what the heck? You know, just as loud as he can, and about falls out of the boat. And this thing, eyes got the size of coffee cups. It went from just looking at me, kind of like a primate. It did look like a primate, but the nose kind of looked like the button nose on a bear. Not the snout part, but the tip of it, you know? It's kind of cute looking underneath all them teeth, or above all those teeth. Anyway, it sprang up like it was on hydraulic lift shocks and started running. And he ran to our left along the creek, or the pond bank or reservoir we were on, around the shore. That's what I meant to say. I'll have to look that word up. But I'm sure that he was probably running 25 miles an hour or better, if I was gonna guess. And there was a bunch of dead wood laying there, a big pile. It's probably 4 foot high and about 16 feet across, where the wood had piled up, and somebody had been kind enough to push it away from the pond water and make a pile. This thing jumped over that completely, and when it landed on the other side, it went to all fours, and it was gone so fast after it went to all fours that it was a blink of an eye, and he had traveled from here to that tree line behind you. Just boom. And I've just been talking and thinking to myself for years, and 20 years later, I don't mind telling anybody that I promise you that these things are real. I believe they're a type of old hominid. I think that if there's more of one, people ask this all the time, do you think they're human-like or do you think they're ape-like? And if I was going to have to put my hand on these hot coals down here and swear, I'd say more primate. But it's not like any primate that we know of. And I wanted you to hear that story, and that's all I had to say. Thank you.